To begin in South Sudan, and a high-level mediation team from the African Union Commission says it is in the country to find a reconciliation between its top leadership. A peace deal that's been in place since 2018 is at a breaking point following a dispute between President Salva Kiir and First Vice President Riek Machar, who are at the heart of a power-sharing agreement. The dispute stems from violence which broke out in Upper Nile State earlier this year between government troops and an armed group accused of being allied with Machar. Last Wednesday, the government arrested Machar on charges of trying to stir up a rebellion, an arrest which his supporters claim goes against the terms of the peace deal. The African Union says it wishes to meet both leaders, but Machar's detention may prevent that. The mediation team will also meet other crucial players in South Sudan, including the UN mission and the Election Commission. And for more on these peace efforts and the escalating dispute, I'm joined by Dr. Hassan Khannenje, a director at the Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies here in Nairobi. Dr. Khannenje, thank you for joining us on the program. So what is your reading exactly of the lengthy deployment of the African Union mediation in South Sudan?
I think the current deployment has been in part informed by the urgency that the crisis has created, especially at a time when South Sudan was simply trying to put itself back together, and there is a real danger that is going to relapse into full-blown civil war with catastrophic consequences for the region at a time when the region itself is in a state of flux with regard to conflict.
So this is the second African mediation team to visit South Sudan in a week, following the one by the regional IGAD Special Envoy, Raila Odinga. What do you make of African leaders taking the lead in trying to end that crisis in South Sudan?
First of all, it is purely in line with the African spirit of the African Union spirit of African solutions to African problems. And so this is also an attempt to demonstrate that they can be able to do this in practice. But number two, the entire world is distracted by conflicts, especially in Europe and the Middle East, that I think is now incumbent upon the African Union and African leadership to do something about their own continent. And number three, for a number of these leaders, this is a conflict that is happening in the backyard. At the time when, of course, they're trying to resolve the one in the northern part of Sudan, as well as other parts of the continent. And so since it is home, and they're going to be called to account at some point for having not done anything, I think there is a realization that they need to take an initiative in terms of leading a process that is going to allow for a resolution of the conflict.
Well, the peace process in South Sudan has struggled, Dr. Khannenje, since the peace agreement was signed in 2018. Why is this so? And what options does the country and the international community have if the current mediation efforts fail?
First of all, yes, we've seen this conflict remain intractable for a very long time. And this in part is because of the lack of consensus as well as delay in the implementation of the revitalized agreement, when it comes to the South Sudan. Number two, there's been absence of pressure by a powerful third party or the international community to force the main protagonists to actually come to an agreement in the implementation of what they've already agreed on. And that is why those delays have actually contributed to the current crisis. And, number three, one of the things we have seen is that there's been a proliferation as well as multiplicity of actors, what we call spoilers. So you have conflict profiteers within the South Sudan theater that have actually made things virtually impossible. And perhaps finally, just lack of an organized, robust approach, of course, in the wake of multiplicity of conflicts on the continent that has removed focus from the South Sudan conflict to elsewhere, and thereby contributing to the kind of stalemate and crisis we see today in Juba.
All right, Dr. Hassan Khannenje joining us there from Nairobi. Thank you. And in neighboring Sudan, officials say at least 50 people have been killed in retaliatory attacks by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The RSF have been fighting the army in a bitter civil war for almost 2 years now. The attacks were on several villages in southern Omdurman, a city which the RSF had vacated in recent weeks following an army offensive. One community spokesperson said the paramilitary forces used heavy weapons, including artillery, rockets and anti-aircraft guns against civilians, resulting in the deaths of children, women and elderly people. Meanwhile, fierce clashes were reported between the Sudanese army and the RSF in the city of El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state. A military source says the army inflicted heavy losses on enemy troops and equipment, forcing them to flee their positions. In recent weeks, the territorial control of the RSF has been shrinking rapidly in favor of the army across several states, including Khartoum, Al Jazeera, White Nile, North Kordofan.